Everything's going. Good. Okay, so allow your back to be straight. Your eyes can be slightly open, or if it's more comfortable, you can close them. And when you have your back straight, you don't need it to be tight or tense. So allow your shoulders to relax. You can even raise them up, right? Raise them kind of up towards your ears, and with a sigh, just let them drop. And do that one more time. Raise them up, and with a sigh, breathe in. So that just allows you to find that place of a relaxed but firm posture. Okay, now I'll stop talking and just observe your breath for the next few minutes. Okay, slowly open your eyes. So now the mind is a little calmer, more focused, and we can set a specific motivation for being here. Again, we've said it before, but it merits repeating. When you make a specific and clear motivation to do some action, that influences the results of that action, the power of that action. So attending a class and listening, that's an action. It's an action that takes place over a period of time, an hour and change, but that is an action. Listening to the Dharma, listening to Shantideva's words, contemplating the nature of anger, contemplating the practice of patience and fortitude. Those are activities. So let's make our motivation something that's going to bring all of this action, this whole hour, or however long we're here, within the scope of this motivation. So that will make it have greater impact. What motivation is this? Well, the motivation of, just like our text we're going into, the guide to the Bodhisattva's way of life, how it's about the mind of bodhicitta, the bodhi mind, enlightenment mind, the bodhicitta, or awakening mind. So that's the motivation. easiest way to say it is simply, whatever we do here, whatever comes from this, may it be of service, may it benefit all living beings without exception. So just produce that kind of thought in your own words, but produce that kind of thought, that kind of feeling in your mind now. And for those of you who are Buddhist, you can visualize the Buddha and the merit field, and you can recite the refuge prayer. I'll do it through a chanted version, which some of you may know. If you don't, you can do it in whatever translation or whatever kind of way you have learned to do it. I take refuge until I am awakened in the Buddha, the Dharma, and the Sangha. By the merit I create, by engaging in generosity and the other far-reaching practices, I will attain Buddhahood in order to benefit all sentient beings. I take refuge until I am awakened in the Buddha, the Dharma, and the Sangha. By the merit I create, by engaging in generosity and the other far-reaching practices, I will attain Buddhahood in order to benefit all sentient beings. I take refuge until I have awakened in the Buddha, the Dharma, and the Sangha. By the merit I create, by engaging in generosity and the other far-reaching practices, I will attain Buddhahood in order to benefit all sentient beings. Okay, very good. We can continue going through our text, which is helping us to learn the methods of patience, resilience, forgiveness, fortitude. Those are all branches of the same practice. And when we just recited, or when I just recited that refuge and bodhicitta prayer, it said, through the merit I create by practicing generosity and the other far-reaching practices, those are oftentimes called the six perfections. Geshe Mahadran, I believe, briefly went through them last class. So what are they again? The perfection of generosity, perfection of ethical conduct, perfection of this one we're focused on, patience, and the perfection of joyous effort and energy, concentration, or meditative concentration, and wisdom. So one of those, of course, is what we're focused on here. And it's a whole spectrum of like what we refer to as these different kinds of emotions in Western thought, Western psychology, this range of things, right? Patience is a good word for it, but it includes also forgiveness. It includes also resilience. These other very important, right, concepts. Even endurance to some degree, depending on what we're talking about. So what we'll do for today is we'll do a little review of the last the first few verses that we already have gone through in chapter 6, this chapter on patience. Then we'll continue going through verses, and then we'll have a few minutes for meditation, reflection. And yeah, and after that, if there are questions, we can do Q&A. All right, so I'll do a screen share so everyone can see the verses. And I'll try to make the words big so even those who are in person watching on the screen, you can see, I hope. Let's see, full screen. Now I gotta zoom in. Okay, that's nice and big, I hope. Okay, can everybody see? Good. Okay, so again, the title of the chapter, just patience. 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 Good. So actually, I'll define patience and anger a little bit more clearly because I don't think until now we've actually really sat down and gotten a definition of anger in this course so far. So let me go into let me do the review of these first few verses here, and then I'll give a definition. Okay. So just to review and maybe share a few other thoughts about these first few verses. First verse, whatever wholesome deeds such as venerating the Buddhas and generosity that may have been amassed over 1,000 eons will all be destroyed in one moment of anger. Okay. So here, what Shantideva is doing is laying out the destructive power of anger for us. Now, why would he do that? Why would we want to know the destructive power of anger? Well, it's like any kind of threat management, right? We need to know what we're up against. We need to know how big of a threat is this thing really? What it really can it do? If we're talking about, trying to, reduce the possibility of a nuclear war, whatever, something that's very dangerous, right? We need to know, well, what really would be the destruction if a nuclear bomb was dropped, right? What would it really do? We need to understand the threat. It's the same with anger, okay? Anger is something that is harmful, something that is dangerous, right? Well, what kind of threat is it really? What does it really do? Well, here Shantideva says, just a moment of it destroys wholesome deeds that have been amassed over 1,000 eons. Now, this is an area where learning what we call Nalanda debate or Tibetan debate is very helpful because there's a little bit of a logical point that we have to reflect on to really understand what this verse is saying. So logic is important for, daily life, for understanding, claims made in any context, but especially when it comes to understanding these texts written by Buddhist masters, because they very, most of them, at least in our tradition, very heavily train in logic. So like you can, everything they write, everything they say is like with this awareness of the certain kind of logical relations or points. Okay, so what am I saying here? So there's a difference between saying that a moment of anger will destroy 1,000 eons of wholesome deeds. And that's one thing, right? That's just kind of a simple statement, like with a subject and predicate. Subject is one moment of anger, predicate is will destroy 1,000 eons of wholesome deeds. Now, there's another kind of statement which we call a statement of pervasion. Statement of pervasion. Okay, some of you know what this is. Some of you may never have heard this before. So just listen and it might make sense to you. And if not, next time you hear it, it will. Take some time. Take some time for this kind of logic, this way of thinking logically to settle in. It's not something we're really used to, frankly. But anyway, so a statement of pervasion would be something like, so it's not what's in this verse, but it would be if you said something like, if something is anger, right? Or if a person has a moment of anger arise, then that necessarily destroys 1,000 eons of wholesome deeds. Okay, that's saying something different. That's not what Shantideva is saying here, though. Okay, so it's sort of like saying, right, so what did I say again? If someone has a moment of anger arise, that necessarily destroys 1,000 eons of wholesome deeds. That would mean every single time, because you could read this verse and think, well, then every single time I just like have a single moment of anger literally lasts for, a split second, then I'm destroying all of the merit I've created like since all this time. It doesn't mean that. Okay, well, what does it mean? Why doesn't it mean that? Well, just think of a simpler example. Okay, you can say something like fire. Just like looking at fire. Fire will burn down your house, right? Fire can burn down your house. Fire will burn down your house. Okay, it will, right? If there's a fire, it will burn down your house. There, there can be fires which burn down your house. If something is fire, if someone lights a fire, Does it necessarily burn down your house? Well, does it? You have fires in your house all the time. If you have a gas burning stove, or if you have a what do you call it? A stove, right? I mean, a wood burning stove. You have that. You have fires all the time that don't burn down your house, and they're right in your house, right? So not all fires are going to burn down your house, but in general, like fire will burn down your house. Right? Okay, so it's like that. If something is a fire, or if someone lights a fire, it doesn't necessarily burn down your house. If you give rise to anger for a moment, it doesn't necessarily destroy, 1,000 eons of wholesome deeds. Okay, but it has the potential to. Now, what kind of anger would? What instance, what case would it be? Well, it's like with fire when it gets out of hand, right? That's one way of looking at this verse, right? There are many ways of looking at all of these verses too, not just one. So I'm giving one way now. So it's like when a fire gets out of hand, then it can burn down your house, right? That same wood, fire in your stove or fire on your stovetop, it can get out of hand. And we even have, lots and lots of cases that we see, unfortunately, in the world where, you know, someone in a moment of uncontrolled rage, a moment of fury, they destroy their whole life, right? Their whole family's life. Someone gets really angry, some for road rage, for whatever, catch their spouse being unfaithful, go and grab their gun in a moment of a flurry of rage, and that anger just destroyed their whole life, right? The rest of their life is in prison or what have you. So certainly we can see cases where anger will do this. Now, when we say, well, does that kind of anger destroy 1,000 eons of wholesome deeds? Well, it's hard to know because we don't see the the wholesome deeds that we created over 1,000 eons. They're like not physical objects we can like see and tally up like that. But probably this would probably be a case, or how some commentaries explain it, where there's a person who has very strong anger and that leads to a harmful action towards like a very holy person, like like His Holiness the Dalai Lama or the Buddha, or like a very, very, highly realized holy being, then that anger towards them could be this destructive, right? And you can kind of feel like when you really, really let anger really turn, really build up, and it really takes you over, even if you don't end up like, hopefully, most of us, we don't end up doing anything like irreversibly damaging, in our lives or to other people. But maybe we say something that really is, mean, right? We say something that really is disrespectful, right? Or we throw a tantrum or whatever, right? I've done it, right? Even in like public, like you're in a store and you get you perceive that you're being cheated, even if you are or not, and or that someone's cheating you, mistreating you, whatever. And you start saying, no, no, I'm not gonna do that. No, no, take it back. No, give me my money back. But whatever, you throw a fit, right? We feel it after, right? You feel the after effect of that, you know? So even if we don't see however many eons of merit are destroyed, you can definitely tell that there is like something shifted in you after that anger arose and you act on it, right? There's just this bad aftertaste, right? The bad aftertaste of anger. And then it's usually like a kind of guilt or regret too, right? Okay, next one we can go to. There is no evil like hatred, and no fortitude like patience. Thus, I should strive in various ways to meditate on patience. So Geshe-ma made a very, very wonderful comment, very meaningful comment last week about this verse, where she said, if anyone remembers, if you can really see hatred as evil, then you are an advanced practitioner, right? If you can see hatred as evil, you're an advanced practitioner. Now, why would that be? Why do you think that would be? If anyone has a suggestion, feel free to say it and chime in. Well, I mean, there could be many answers, many good answers. I'll just share one suggestion. Well, like to really see what anger and hatred are doing in your mind, right? You sort of need to have a certain level of sensitivity, right? You need to have a certain degree of awareness of what's happening in your mind, sensitivity to the different emotions coming and going in your mind. And you also sort of need to have some space from it, some space from anger. Like thinking of myself, I definitely have, made effort to reduce anger, but still, I mean, it still rises daily. And it's and when I was younger, before I even knew about these practices or realized that hatred and anger are things that before I even identified them, right, and then realized that they really need to be dealt with. I mean, I could say I was in a near constant state of anger, like at least some subtle irritation and annoyance happening pretty much all the time. Pretty much. Yeah. And that's probably like, frankly, a big cause of like, we talk about depression, right? Mental illness, all these different types of mental illness. Um, I mean, depression is a big, big one, right? That we have different types of anxiety disorders, different types of depressive disorders. And there's a whole, it's like a pandemic. There's so much, right? Um, and I really think a big cause of this is just the fact that we have so much irritation and anger. I'm not saying it's equated with, it's not the same thing as depression, but I really think that if we could help society learn to deal with anger and make the mind, recognize anger as evil, as an enemy, as something to be, you know, directly, forcefully dealt with, then maybe I think there would be a big change in people's basic level of mental health. So I should strive in various ways. So Shantideva is also setting up the rest of the chapter, right? Strive in various ways to meditate on patience. Well, that's saying, well, now he's going to go into a variety of ways to meditate on patience. He's going to explain or introduce a variety of different reflections that we can do in our meditation on and off the cushion, right? Meditation doesn't just mean sitting down on a meditation cushion and doing a specific set of prayers and making the specific kind of whatever you have, your bell, your gong, you don't need all that for meditation, right? Meditation means, right, training your mind, training your mind. Okay, so this one I think was the last one that Getchima went through last week. My mind will not experience peace if it fosters painful thoughts of hatred. I shall find no joy or happiness, unable to sleep. I shall feel unsettled. So it's giving more of the negative qualities of anger. Like, as I said, right, we have to know what we're up against. What is the threat of anger? Well, it's giving more examples of what's wrong with it. You just never have peace, right? You don't have joy. You don't have happiness. Oftentimes, if you really, let yourself ruminate with thoughts of anger, you can't sleep and you're unsettled, right? Literally, like you can you can't sit down and settle and relax, right? It makes you it does make you anxious as well as depressed. Yeah. Now, let's give a little definition here. I said I would give a definition of anger as well as patience, right? So you may be wondering, like, well, I could see how, you know, getting mad at someone makes me feel unsettled and unable to sleep. But is that anger, or is that like rumination, or is that, what's the word? What's the word when you're holding on to anger towards someone? I'm forgetting the word in English, but
Oh,
resentment.
resentment, maybe.
Yes, Renee, thank you. Perfect. Thank you so much. So resentment, right? That's resentment. That's not anger. That's resentment, right? You might think that. Okay. So that's just define anger. the anger is like a broad category, right? There's a lot of different types of anger. So resentment is one type of anger. Rage is one type of anger. But even irritation, even annoyance, even frustration, there's subtler types of anger, but there's still anger. And hatred and bias. I mean, bias, negative bias, right? Where you really are biased against a group of people. That's a kind of anger. So basically, what is it? Well, it's a mental element. So mental element in the sense of it's a kind of um, it's a mental phenomenon which I hesitate to call an emotion because it has so much to do with the way you think as well. Now, this is just overall in Buddhist psychology where the distinction between emotion and cognition isn't really made because there's just a basic recognition that our emotions are so deeply linked with what we're thinking. In other words, with our cognitive appraisals of something, right? So because of that, it's not right to just say it's just an emotion. It's a way of feeling affectively together with a way of apprehending or appraising something. Now, what is that way of appraising? Well, it's a way of appraising something where it sees it in a negative light, but in 100%, like completely negative. It's a kind of tunnel vision, right? Completely negative or harmful. And it actually, this is the phrasing we use, but again, you have to think about it and kind of meditate on even just this definition. It's a wish to harm or destroy. Now, it doesn't mean necessarily that you want to kill the object of your anger, right? That's not what it means. But it's a wish to get out of here, get rid of it, a wish to harm in that sense, right? Okay. So it's again, it's the whole mental kind of the whole quality of mind that comes together with that cognitive appraisal. This is the negative. I don't like it. Get it away, destroy it, harm it. Okay. And what is it? What does anger arise towards? These various types of anger. Well, it could be towards literally anything, anything. But generally speaking, it helps to kind of make maybe a list so that we can, again, when we're contemplating or when we're just observing our own minds in daily life, we can see like, oh, okay, now I'm getting anger towards this kind of object, now towards this kind of object. So what kinds of objects are most common the most common, focal points of our anger? Well, it tends to be either our own suffering itself, our own suffering, pain itself, right? When you have pain, you have that sense of, oh, get it away. I don't like it, right? I don't want this, destroy it, right? Just having pain, physical pain, mental pain. You stub your toe, ow. Have a headache, ow, right? Someone hits you, ow. Or you're feeling depressed, you're feeling anxious, you're feeling, right, something negative. The anger itself makes you feel unhappy and unsettled. You can have anger towards that feeling that you get from your anger, right, towards suffering, or simply the suffering of you're too cold, you're too hot, right? Oh, it's so hot. Oh, right? This is actually like a pretty standard colloquial use of patience, right? Someone who's kind of intolerant, impatient, they can't, it's like it's too hot and you can't bear it. That's kind of impatience, right? So being patient means being tolerant, being able to absorb that experience without falling into anger. So anger can be towards suffering itself, right? A bug bite. So many examples we can give. You go on all day. Okay. Or it can be towards the cause of the suffering, the cause of the suffering, right? So the bug bite, the feeling of the pain on your arm, on your body, is the suffering. But the bug, right? The cause of it, right? The cause of your suffering. You stub your toe and you get angry at the table you stubbed your toe on, right? Stupid thing, get out of here. Again, same attitude, right? Get out of my way. You bang your head on a shelf, the cabinet door, open the cabinet. You don't remember it's open. You turn around, bang your head. ah, stupid door, right? Get angry at the source or cause of the pain, suffering. And then the third main category of things we tend to get angry at is people. People, people who can sometimes be the cause of our suffering, but oftentimes they're not really. It's just we just get angry at people, right? And then we get angry, and then you can think of, well, why would we get angry at someone? Well, we get angry at someone because they are harming us, or they have harmed us, or we just believe that they will harm us, right? We just believe they will harm us in the future. We can still get angry at them. Or if they're harming someone we like, our friend, relative, someone we love or we like, we get angry, right? They're harming them, or they have in the past, or we believe they will, we'll get angry at a person, right? Or even if they're helping someone that we don't like, someone that's on our enemies list, then, you know, we also get angry. They're helping someone we don't like. They're an object of anger, very easily become an object of anger. Okay, so anger is towards any of those kinds of objects, towards our suffering itself, towards the origin of our suffering, towards people, towards living beings. And it's this attitude, or again, we have to use a few words to really describe it, because the English language and Western psychology really doesn't fully do it justice, right? But it's this cognitive appraisal, this way of feeling together with a way of thinking that mostly is, right, holding the attitude of destruction, destroy it, destroy it, get out, go away. Okay. But the main point is you have to meditate to experience it, right? You can learn yourself. We all experience anger. So it's something that is a universal experience, but you still have to do the internal investigation, because it's not something that we can see. I can't point it out to you with, put it under a microscope, or, prepare it on, like a slide of it, and allow you to look at it with some kind of, even, we want to check it with some kind of measuring apparatus. What are we going to use? I mean, but what's the best we have? Like fMRI technology for imaging of the brain. But are you really going to see anger in some colored like image that's a representation of blood flow in someone's brain? You might see a mark, right? A sign of anger there. You're not actually going to ever see anger, right? Anger is the experience. Anger is not a color on a screen, right? Okay. Now, I said I would define patience as well. Okay, so patience is another mental element, a way of thinking, a way of cognitively appraising things. And it's so funny because it's so easy to define now that we've defined anger. It's just the non wish to harm. It's the direct opposite of anger. It's the non wish to destroy it. So it's a little different from love, right? Love is also a powerful antidote or counterforce to anger, right? Love is the wish that other beings have happiness and its causes as well. So that wish together with the emotional experience, so that is also going to help overcome and reduce our anger. But it's not the direct opponent or the direct opposite. So that's the patience. The patience is just literally, so anger is the wish to harm, patience is the non-wish or the absence of the wish to harm, as a mental, I guess maybe better to say the restraint from the wish to harm. Okay, hope that's clear. And of course, different traditions and even different teachers within one tradition are going to explain these in slightly different ways. It doesn't mean that they're contradictory or that one's right and one's wrong. It's nice to learn from a variety of perspectives, and then it fills in, right? It fills in the picture more and more. So it doesn't mean that like there's one right, one wrong, they're contradictory in any way. It's just because it's something that is subtle, right? It's not something you can just pick up and put under the microscope that you could just, you know, we can't look at it like a physical object and understand it that easily. So there's a lot of different nuance and a lot of different ways of talking about it to understand the nuance. Okay, let's keep going a bit. A master who has hatred is in danger of being killed, even by those who, for their wealth, I have to move the window with the people in it to see the text. Sorry. Okay, a master who has hatred is in danger of being killed, even by those who, for their wealth and happiness, depend upon his kindness. Okay, so this is fairly obvious. It's just pointing out flaws of anger. Even a master, I mean, this is a case of, an older context where we don't really have so much anymore, but you can just think of the CEO or manager at a company, right? And their employees depend on them for their salaries, right? They're the one who gives the salary. They're the one who hires them. They have the control over hiring and firing them. So the workers, the employees depend on that person for his kindness or her kindness. But if they have hatred, meaning they're, like constantly bitter and constantly insulting and belittling and even unethical, and they do tons of things to to harm others and lie and cheat and steal, and who knows all the things people can do, right? People can do all sorts of things. So if they're full of hatred and you know then what? People don't like them, and eventually they start to get hated by other people, right? I mean, we see, obvious, very extreme examples, although, it's very extreme, is like slave rebellions, right? I mean, it's sad, but it's true. The slave masters, right, were, you know, giving the food and I mean, it says by, even by those who for their wealth and happiness depend upon the kindness. So I don't know how much wealth and happiness slave masters gave slaves, but anyway, that was the situation, right? Master and slave. And, you know, they were beaten, they were disrespected, they were treated as less than human. They hated their masters and when they could, often killed them, you know? Okay, I think that's pretty clear, this verse. 5, by it, friends and relatives are disheartened. Sorry, let me move this so you guys don't see it. Don't want to. Let me see. What's the best? Oh, I see. I can put it there. Okay. It snapped to the bottom, so that's better now. Let me start over. Number 5. By it, friends and relatives are disheartened. Though drawn by my generosity, they will not trust me. In brief, there is nobody who lives happily with anger. So more flaws of anger. So this is getting us to recognize, right? You reflect on it. What does meditating on patience in this context mean, right? Shantideva said, strive through various means to meditate on patience, and now he's giving us meditations on patience. Well, what is the meditation? Well, you think about the verse and think about actual examples, right? That you've heard about, seen, experienced. Oh, or just logically thinking, right? Oh, even if I'm very generous, even if I give away lots of things and I always am, you know, giving nice gifts to my friends, and anytime they ask for money or anyone wants to borrow something, I give it right away. And even if I let people stay in my house, but if I'm then constantly bickering with them and getting in fights and getting angry at them, even if I give them things, they won't trust me. They won't like being around me, right? So your friends and relatives, won't really be close friends and relatives. For that, you need to have genuine care and concern, compassion for others, which is, again, not the direct opposite of anger, but if you have that, then anger can't arise. They can't arise at the same moment, right? So if you have compassion and love for others, then people they'll just like you, right? They'll know that you care about them. They know they can trust you. They know that you have your good intentions for them instead of again, the definition of anger, the intention of harm. Hence, the enemy anger creates sufferings such as these, but whoever assiduously overcomes it finds happiness now and hereafter. Okay, so now it's kind of a summarizing verse, right, from those earlier few verses. The enemy now, so we've already understood, that it's evil, right? Pointed out in the second verse. Now you're calling it an enemy. The enemy is anger. The enemy is not the person that we're angry at. The enemy is the anger. And again, it's just pure logic. If and someone is harming you, but you just don't have anger towards them, then they can't really harm you, right? Because no matter what happens, right? If you don't have anger, your mind will stay happy. So no one can take away your happiness. So who can? Only anger. Only anger can take away your happiness. Okay? So that's why it's the enemy. And so whoever assiduously overcomes it finds happiness now and hereafter. So if you overcome anger, then you'll find happiness. So now he's setting up, right? Okay, so now, set your mind, right? Set your mind that you're going to make this determination. Okay, I'm going to overcome anger. I'm going to overcome anger because I want happiness. I want happiness. Who doesn't? I want happiness. Every living being wants happiness. How do you do it? You have to overcome anger. So this is kind of like giving us that kind of like a pep talk, great motivation. Whoever overcomes anger, you will find happiness now and in future lives, later in this life, all the time. Okay, so now it's again giving more like description of what anger is doing, how it arises, right? It's kind of giving more, filling in the picture more in the next few verses. And again, strengthening that determination, that decision to overcome anger. Having found its fuel of mental unhappiness in the prevention of what I wish for and in the doing of what I do not want, hatred increases and then destroys me. Okay, so hatred here, we get also say anger again. It's pretty similar in the Tibetan, but it's you could say anger here as well, but it's meaning like a stronger as it increases, right? It's getting stronger and stronger. So that fits with how we use the word hatred, right? When anger gets really strong, right? So what does this mean here? This one's a little harder to parse out, but it's saying here, having found its fuel of mental unhappiness, so anger, right? It's fuel of mental unhappiness. So where does anger come from? Mental unhappiness. Where does mental unhappiness come from? Well, the prevention of what I wish for and the doing or the emerging of what I do not want. Okay. So actually we can talk about maybe some of you know this if you've read Buddhist texts before, or attended Buddhist teachings before. There's a list of 8 types of suffering that are kind of pervasive within the world of humans. Our human lives are full of these 8 kinds of suffering. What are they? Well, the first 4 are just kind of natural, like parts of being literally just being human. So birth, aging, sickness, and then death are the first 4. And then the next 4, not getting what you desire, not getting what you want, and then meeting with something you do not want, then being separated from something that you had and were attached to or wanted. Separation. And then finally, what we say is just having the 5 contaminated aggregates. And I know the word aggregate has come up a bit before, but won't go into detail now, but it basically just means having this kind of, this body and mind that are conditioned to become angry, conditioned to, erupt with all these various different destructive emotions. So when we have those experiences, we don't get what we want, we meet with something, we don't get what we want, we meet with something we don't want, right? The doing, maybe it's better to say the experiencing of what I do not want, right? Then the mind naturally becomes unhappy. So it's sort of like stages here of subtlety of the anger growing and growing, right? So even in that very first moment where the thing just doesn't happen how you want it, right? Now there could be something that's just like an unpleasant feeling, right? Just like a kind of like, uh, you know, an unpleasant affect, an unpleasant feeling. Now, that's not necessarily anger there, right? That could just be a feeling, but if you can catch it right there and just observe that, okay, here's some negative affect, some unpleasantness. If you can catch it there, like in your, you know, mindfulness or in your awareness, and then just observe, right? Just observe. Okay, this is this, you know, this is this event happening. This is, I wanted, you know, I I wanted it to be a nice sunny day when I took my friends out to the park and it rained. The first moment you get wet, you see the dark clouds coming, it's unhappiness. Okay, that's it. And you observe it and you just let it be that moment. But then you don't give in to the anger, right? What are you doing? Well, you're practicing patience, right? That's right. Not going to lead to what it's saying here, hatred increasing and then destroying you. But if you do give in to the anger or you don't observe carefully, right, and you just let the mind, the emotions take over because you're not observing and you're not trying and you don't know that it's something that is even possible to do, if you just let your mind run around, run you around, then it will increase, right? Oh no, it's raining. Oh no, I had been planning on this for weeks. Go to this or go out to a hike in this nice trail, and now we can't go, right? Or whatever it is. I mean, you know, you look in the political situations in the world and in our own countries and global politics. There's so many things that we want to happen that don't happen. So many things that happen that we didn't want to happen. It's like, but we can actually come to gain a kind of stability in our peace of mind. So Shantideva will keep talking about how to do that. Therefore, I should totally eradicate the fuel of this enemy. For this enemy has no other function than that of causing me harm. So now he's saying the fuel was the mental unhappiness, right? So that's sort of like you have just that basic unpleasant feeling, and then right away there's a reaction. So this is it really, I mean, it's almost impossible, right? Until very, very like high spiritual achievement to like not have any little bit of anger reaction whatsoever, right? So generally, there's at least some reaction of anger, at least a little piece of it. That's the mental unhappiness, right? That Shantideva was talking about here. So he's saying that's the source of the anger. In other words, that there's just a basic feeling that leads you to have anger, but then that increases into greater anger or hatred. But if you can prevent yourself from having even that first moment of anger there, right? That first moment of, you know, go away, stop. The clouds are coming in, go away, destroy them. If you can stop that first moment, then, as he says, sorry, let me go back up. Okay. So he's saying, so we should destroy this first moment of anger even, right? So how do we do that? Well, here he is again. He's kind of now talking about all these the the threat of anger, what it's going to do to us if we don't overcome it. So that gives us the determination. It makes us recognize, okay, I really absolutely at all costs, no matter what, I'm going to do everything in my power to stop myself from getting angry. Okay. This doesn't mean suppressing anger, by the way, right? It means having a mature and realistic attitude towards what's going on in your mind. Okay. Means so mature and realistic means recognizing that anger will still come and you don't have to get like upset at yourself or being angry, but you reinforce, right, reinforce that determination when you see that, oh, the anger came, I let it, I wasn't able to stop it, and it led to these negative results. Okay, so now let me bring myself back, try again next time, try again next time, try to catch it earlier. Okay, whatever befalls me, I shall not disturb my mental joy. For having been made unhappy, I shall not accomplish what I wish, and my virtues will decline. So Shantideva is saying, like, look, you can just make this determination to just keep your mind happy, even when you have an unpleasant thing happen, when you don't get what you want, or when you meet with something you don't want. You can just, through training, not instantly, not at the snap of the fingers, but through training, right? It starts here. It starts today through training. Now you're recognizing that anger really is this threat that you really want to overcome. So through training over time, over months, over years, then I can just keep my mind happy. I can just keep my mind happy through training over and over again, seeing what happens when you get angry, and then using these kinds of reflections to prevent yourself from getting angry. Why be, and this, I'll just stop with this verse because it's this is one of the most, this chapter here, chapter 6, contains probably more than any other chapter of the kind of the most quoted verses from this text, this chapter 6 here. And this is one of them. Especially His Holiness the Dalai Lama quotes it very often, but many other scholars do as well. Why be unhappy about something if it can be remedied? And what is the use of being unhappy about something if it cannot be remedied? Okay. So this is really, it's like we talked about how anger is a kind of cognitive appraisal, right? Well, this is a kind of what we're doing here. It's Shantideva is helping us to do is a kind of cognitive reframing, right? Cognitively reframing the situations that make us, or that we give into to allow us to get angry, right? These situations that act as a spark that leads to our anger. So what is the ordinary cognitive framing? What is the ordinary way we think of things, our ordinary outlook before we practice and train ourselves? Well, it's basically an attitude based on shoulds. It's the religion of should. It's like this is our natural outlook, right? Everything should happen the way I want it to. The universe should comply with my desires. Other people should behave in a way that suits me, that pleases me, that doesn't offend me. So when we think of a verse like this and you really kind of like let it seep into you, into your way of thinking, you're reframing that from an attitude of should to an attitude of is. The world just is. The world just is. The world should not be anything, should not be something that gives me pleasure all the time and makes everything work the way I wanted it to. It just is the case that it's not. It just is the reality, right? That things don't work out how I wanted them to. And you can still want things to happen a certain way. You can still have, desires, positive desires, right? For things to happen that are good for the world, that are good for you, good for your family, good for the world. But when they don't happen, there's no need to get unhappy. And what's the reasoning here? Well, if it can be, there's only two options when something happens that you didn't want to happen. Problem, right? Only two options for problems. Either they have a solution that can be remedied, or they don't have a solution and they can be remedied, right? So lots of things do have solutions, and sometimes, to know whether or not it has a solution, you need to, might need to talk to other people. You might need to sit down and think about it for a while. You might need to look over the options, right? Like what might be the solutions and try to rule them out to see, if any of them really will work. You have to sometimes think about it. Sometimes you try, and then you still see after you tried a possible solution, it didn't work and the situation still hasn't changed. Okay. So you try something and then you realize, oh, it's actually category 2. you thought it was the kind of problem that had a solution. In reality, it just isn't, and you can't change it. So what's the use in being unhappy about it? What's the use in getting upset or angry? Okay, so let's just do a minute of meditation. I know we're about to just barely yeah, we're going over, but let's just do 1 minute or 2 minutes just on this verse. So again, reflect on the verse, read it, let yourself think about its meaning and how you can apply it when something goes wrong or you have a problem, and how you might be able to change the way that you relate to the situation, recognizing that there's just no point. There's just no point. It doesn't add anything to being able to resolve the problem by getting angry. Okay. And I'll just make one small suggestion, and this may be true for some of you. If not, that's fine, don't take it. But for me, one big area where anger, in a mild form, but still anger, comes so frequently is when, my phone or computer or whatever electronic device doesn't do what you want it to do, right? When it crashes or doesn't load or freezes, right? When your phone or computer doesn't do what you want it to do. So that's since it happens so often, it's a very nice area to practice, reflect these reflections and um, but practice them everywhere. I mean, really, really try to become aware, be observant of your anger as it arises, and check and say, okay, where is this coming from? Why? What was that first moment where the mind became unhappy? What was I not getting that I wanted, or what was I meeting that I didn't want? Be very kind of playful and experiment and observant about it. Okay, let's just do a dedication. And then if there are questions, people can stay on. If the people in person want to discuss, I sent some discussion questions that you can go through if you'd like. So the dedication, again, everything that we did in this hour was for the purpose of benefiting all sentient beings. That was our initial motivation. So again, just now with like the energy of having done the reflection, of having done the learning, now we send all that, all the positive results, all the positive fruits. We send all that to actually affecting the goal of enlightening all living beings, relieving all living beings from all forms of suffering and misery and problems, and providing all forms of well-being, happiness, sustenance, wealth, welfare, and that we may genuinely be able to, you know, make that happen, right? In our daily lives, day by day, more and more, be able to really genuinely benefit other beings. Okay, I'll just recite I don't have the verses to show you, but just recite a couple of verses. um, Melinda, can you do it? I forget the chant. I haven't done it in English in a long time. Do you know them? Well, I'll just recite it. Okay. May the supreme jewel bodhicitta that has not arisen arise and grow, and may that which has arisen not diminish but increase more and more. In the snowy mountain pure land, you are the source of all benefit and happiness. All powerful Tenzin Gyatso, Chenrezig, may you stay until samsara. Okay. That's a prayer for the long life of His Holiness the Dalai Lama, who was just down here in South India for several weeks near our monastery. So we got to see him a few times, and he's turning 90 this year. So it is good to wish for his long life. But he also said, again here, but many times in the past few years, that according to his dreams, some signs in his dreams, that he's confident that he'll live till his 110s, at least until it was 110. So that's doesn't mean we could still pray for him to live long, but he's confident that he will. So that's nice. Okay, and I'm very happy to see if there are any questions. Oops, I think I sent that to the wrong. Go ahead. Let's see, Shmuel maybe, or I don't know who was first, but Shmuel can go ahead. Oh, do I have to unmute you? No.
Yeah, I'll go second, please.
Oh, so Melinda, you had one or someone there?
I'm just thinking, I'm thinking about the meaning of anger. So if you're worried and upset about something, is that actually also would include anger, is what you're saying? That's not, in that mind condition, anger is also there. Like if you're worried about someone, with compassion even, but is there still anger? Or I'm a little confused about how sadness and worry and anxiety includes anger.
So I don't think worry necessarily includes anger. What I was trying to say is that anger is often a cause of anxiety. Yeah. Or it can be one cause of anxiety, not the only one, right? So is anger present in worry? I don't think it would be, because worry is not, I mean, it's not a part of worry, right? Again, it could be involved in creating it, but worry is not, there's no sense of wanting to harm something in worry, right? There's more of like a fear of being harmed. Yeah. More of like a fear of being harmed, as far as I know it. So what's really involved with worry more in terms of like what's clearly described in Buddhist psychology? Worry, anxiety obviously are not terms traditionally used in the Buddhist text, but what would be most relevant, I think, would be two things. One would be attachment. In other
So there's time to go.
whatever, like to have the things you have and enjoy the things you enjoy, that attachment to those things, right? That means that now you see a threat or a possibility of losing them, right? Or of something happening that would interrupt your enjoyment of the things that you're attached to. So it's more directly connected to an attachment, which again it all links back to the self-grasping ignorance, which I know is a very deep concept, or again, it's something that's in our minds, so we all can see it, but it takes quite a bit of reflection and contemplation to really see it. But that's that basic sense that like I am an independently existing being who is this sort of all, and I'm very important. Like I'm the center of the world, and what happens to me is the most important thing in the world. So it's this sort of like, it's related more to those kinds of mental elements, or those psychological constructs, more of attachment and self-cherishing or self-grasping ignorance. And self-cherishing, even. Self-cherishing is a little different, right? Because self-cherishing that's the part of it where it's really like my needs are more important than their needs, or your needs, right? So if you reverse that and really generate an altruistic way of thinking, then there's not so much worry anymore. Just because you're just another one. You're just another one. There's 8 billion, even more other kinds of beings than humans, and you're just another one. It's not that big a deal anymore if something happens to you, you know. Okay, does that make sense? Okay. So I hope, yeah, sorry if I was confusing people by mentioning anxiety there and depression. I wasn't saying that those are forms of anger or that I was saying anger can be causes of those. Okay. Shmuel, your question, please.
Yes, Venerable Donyo. So with regards to should other people be ethical? If they should not be ethical, then it follows that we should not be ethical. If they should be ethical, then it seems to contradict what you earlier said, that we shouldn't judge the world in terms of the should category.
So good, very good question. So that context, the point I was making was that our basic stance in terms of what we allow our emotional world to revolve around, how, in other words, how we allow ourselves to react to what we experience, perceive, is all about like this unrealistic expectation of how things should be, an unrealistic expectation of how things should be, which again is all in relation to, you know, basically arbitrary conditioning, frankly. Just like, how do I think people should act? Well, it's just arbitrary conditioning that makes the way I expect people to act, right? It's not like, you know, maybe you thought about it and everything, but it's basically just a matter of your conditioning. So you have certain preferences, you know, for the people to act a certain way, for the world to be a certain way, and dislike other things. So it's, in other words, it's just the stance of like, when something doesn't go my way, then I'll get angry about it. That's all I'm saying, right? Then that stance is because you're kind of holding the whole world to be this, like, you know, it's just a distorted way of thinking about things. That's what I meant by the perspective or the outlook of should. Now, when you're talking about, now your question, should people be ethical? Well, that just means something different here. When we say people should be ethical, yes, so they should, but that just means that if they want to actually have a happy life and live in a world that is peaceful and harmonious and, you know, fosters well-being for the other members of the world, then the only way to do that, in other words, the cause for that, is to be ethical. So that's what, when we say people should be ethical, it means that that's the means to affect the result that they actually want, or that everyone actually wants, of a happy world, a harmonious world, right? Without fear, when people have rights, when people have, you know, the life, liberty, pursuit of happiness, right? All these freedoms and rights that we cherish so much. So in that sense they should, right? But then when they don't, because they won't, you know, not all of them, then the next meaning of should, that is what I was referring to in the class. That's when you have to recognize, okay, this should means that things. I'm thinking about things that in a way that means that everything affects me, and the way that it affects me is the most important aspect of it, and everything that happens should affect me only in a good way and never in a bad way. And you know, that's when you change your attitude and think, well, I just can't control things, and you know, some things just don't have solutions. Some people just are going to act unethically because they're overwhelmed by their anger, they're overwhelmed by their ignorance. So why get angry? Yeah, okay, thank you. Sorry. I hope that answered your question. Anything else? Okay, wonderful. Then thank you all for joining. I really so glad to be able to go through this wonderful book and talk about something so valuable, right? How to overcome anger and practice patience. So I hope that you guys do some reflection on it over the next week and then the next, especially today, right? When the very day you go through a book and you think about it, and you keep going back over the verses in your mind, like that same day, it's very fresh in your mind. So it's a good opportunity if you can take some time throughout the day, just kind of sit back again and reflect. If you have the text, if you don't have the text, we should find a way to get it to you. But let's do that. We can send it out with the next email. Okay, thank you, everybody. Take care.
Thank you for joining everyone here at the Forest of Wisdom. We're very thrilled to have so many participants joining us on these precious Buddhist lessons. Have a good week.